This episode of The Deep Dive is brought to you by Wadadli Solar LLC, making sure your solar investment actually pays you back.
Okay, so picture this scene for a second. It is a brutal gray winter day in New York City. We are talking right on the water where the air is just heavy and wet.
Yeah.
The temperature is sitting at a stubborn 17 degrees Fahrenheit. But you are standing on a rooftop, completely exposed, no windbreakers, no walls. The wind is just whipping off the harbor, cutting right through you.
So it feels like single digits.
It feels like 8 degrees, man.
Oh, that's the kind of cold that just,
Oh!
it makes your fingers stupid. You know,
Right.
You lose all your dexterity in minutes, and suddenly a simple task like turning a screwdriver becomes this monumental effort.
Exactly. So you're shivering, your fingers are stiffening up, and you have this ticking clock. Because in weather like that, on a roof like that, you have maybe 20, 35 minutes tops before the cold physically forces you back inside.
Right, just to thaw out.
And you aren't up there to admire the skyline. You are there to solve a problem that, well, according to the manual, shouldn't even be happening.
And that is the absolute worst place to be. You've got high stakes, a hostile environment, and a machine that is, for all intents and purposes, lying to you.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating field note from Alexis Lewis of Wadadli Solar. It is a case study about a commercial solar repair that went wrong and then went right, but in a way that tells us something really profound about the world we live in now.
I love this piece of source material. I mean, on the surface, it looks like just a technical log, right? It's about fixing a solar edge inverter.
Sure.
But if you peel back the layers, which is what we're going to do today, it is actually a story about the clash between, official corporate protocols and the gritty, freezing reality of field work.
It feels like a story about that specific moment when you realize the machine you are working on isn't just a machine anymore. It's a computer that just happens to process sunlight.
That is the core tension. We are exploring what happens when the official support channels fail because they are following this rigid script while the person on the roof is dealing with physics, firmware, and, frostbite.
We're going to break down a specific hard reset scenario that saved a project after days of failure.
Yeah, and we are going to ask the big question. Why on earth didn't the support team suggest it in the first place?
But before we get to the solution, let's go back to that freezing rooftop. Set the stage for us. What kind of beast are we dealing with here?
So to ground this, the site is a commercial multi-tenant building in New York. It was built around 2017. The setup is what we call a three-phase 277 480-volt system.
Okay, for those of us who aren't electricians, translate that. This is not a couple of panels on a suburban garage, right?
No, absolutely not. This is big iron. This is heavy-duty commercial electrical infrastructure. 480 volts is serious power. I mean, it's lethal if you make a mistake.
Right.
It requires specific safety gear, arc flash protection, and a very high level of respect. You don't just poke around in there casually. This is the kind of equipment that runs factories or big office towers.
So, high voltage, freezing cold, high stakes. The technician, let's call him the protagonist of our story, he arrives for his second site visit of the day. He gets an alert that one entire section of the solar array is down.
Okay.
He goes up to the roof, does a visual inspection, and finds a tale of 2 inverters. Inverter number 1.
Perfect.
Perfect. It's online, producing power, humming along just like it should.
And inverter number 2 is the problem child. But, and this is where it gets interesting, it's not dead in the way you might expect.
Meaning there wasn't smoke pouring out of it, it wasn't on fire?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No smoke, no scorch marks, no smell of ozone, there were no string faults, no direct current issues. In fact, the green light on the front of the unit was flashing.
Okay, wait. I thought green was good. Usually on any piece of tech, my router, my laptop, a flashing green light is the universal sign for I'm doing my job, leave me alone.
That is the assumption we are all trained to have. It looks fine electrically. But this is the lie that the source material really highlights. The lights are on, but nobody is home. The symptoms were really specific and incredibly confusing. Inverter number 2 could not communicate with inverter number 1. It was showing a unit communication failure.
So it's an introvert, it just stopped talking to its neighbor.
Worse, it stopped talking to everyone. When the tech opened up SetApp, that's the monitoring app technicians use to interface with these devices on their phone, it claimed you couldn't see any devices at all.
That's gaslighting. It's like looking at your laptop, the screen is on, the battery is full, but when you click the hard drive icon, It just says, no hard drive found.
Exactly. It creates this massive cognitive dissonance. Your eyes tell you the electrical system is intact, the wires are connected, the voltage is there, the fans might even be spinning.
Right.
But the digital brain of the machine, he essentially had a stroke. It's just gone. And remember, you were standing in 8-degree wind chill while you try to figure this out.
So day one begins. The tech is up there, freezing. What's the first logical move?
Well, logically, you try to pair the optimizers.
Optimizers. Let's just unpack that for a second.
Right, so in a solar edge system, you have the main inverter, and then under every single solar panel on the roof, there's a small box called a power optimizer.
Okay.
These maximize energy from each specific panel. But to work, they need to talk to the inverter. They create a network. They need to pair up.
Okay, so it's a team effort. The inverter is the captain, the optimizers are the crew.
Precisely. So the tech tries to pair them, but you can't pair what won't talk. The inverter says, I don't see anyone out there. It's just shouting into the void.
So what's next?
So the tech proceeds to the standard troubleshooting loop, the basics.
This is the industrial version of, have you tried turning it off and on again?
Essentially, yes. But it is much more involved than just flipping a light switch.
Mm-hmm.
It's a full shutdown. You have to turn off the DC power coming from the roof.
The solar energy.
Right. Then you turn off the AC power coming from the grid.
Right.
And then, and this is the hard part in the cold, you wait.
Why wait? Just flip it back on.
You can't. You have to wait for the DC capacitors to discharge. These big inverters hold a significant electrical charge, even when the power's cut. It's like a bucket of water that needs to drain slowly.
Oh.
If you flip it back on too fast, the computer inside doesn't actually reboot. It just hiccups. It runs off the residual energy. You need the voltage to drop to absolute zero so the brain actually dies and comes back to life.
So you are just standing on a roof, in the wind, watching a voltmeter slowly drop from 400 volts to zero. That sounds miserable.
It's agonizing. It can take 5 minutes.
A minute.
10 minutes. And you are just standing there losing heat. And then finally you power it back up.
And the result?
Nothing. Silence. The error persists. The green light flashes, just mocking you.
I really want to emphasize the environmental factor here because the source material hammers this home. This isn't a lab. The source notes the tech has 20 to 35 minutes at a time before the cold forces them down. That has to change how you work, right?
Absolutely. It changes the psychology of the whole repair.
Mm.
In a lab or a server room, you can tinker. You can try 5 different things. You can Google the error code comfortably.
Sure.
On that roof, every minute costs you warmth. You stop feeling your fingertips. You drop screws because your hands are shaking. Your phone battery, which you need for the setup, starts dying rapidly because lithium-ion hates the cold. You need a solution that works now.
So when the basics fail, the tech does what you're supposed to do. He retreats to the truck to thaw out and calls support.
The dreaded support call.
I feel like everyone listening has a visceral reaction to this, but in this industry, it sounds like the stakes are a little higher than just resetting a Netflix password.
It's brutal. The source notes that wait times for SolarEdge support can be anywhere from 20 to 40 plus minutes, depending on the time of day.
So let me get this straight. You have a 30-minute window of warmth on the roof,
Right.
and the whole time is 40 minutes.
The math just doesn't work. You are burning your entire warmth window just listening to hold music.
Yeah.
You might be sitting in the truck waiting, then rushing up to the roof when they finally answer.
And then the tech hits the ultimate catch-22.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
The support agent finally picks up, usually reading from a script. And the first thing they say is, okay, we need the inverter online to log into it and diagnose the problem.
Stop. That is infuriating. The reason I am calling you is because the inverter is offline. If it were online, I wouldn't be calling you.
It is the classic bureaucratic absurdity. They cannot diagnose the problem because the problem prevents the diagnosis. The support agent is remote. They rely on the device phoning home to their servers. Since it can't, the agent is blind. They have no visibility.
So the technician on the roof becomes the eyes and ears for the person in the call center.
Yes. The tech is forced into manual labor. They act as a remote hand. The agent says, read me the screen. The tech reads it. The agent says, verify the toggle switch is on. The tech verifies it. The agent says, get out the multimeter and test AC voltages. Check L1 to L2. Now check L2 to L3.
We interrupt this podcast with a quick reminder. Solar systems that aren't inspected don't perform as designed. Annual inspections protect output, safety, and payback. Wadadli Solar LLC, serving the U.S. Antigua, Guyana.
They're just repeating steps the tech has likely already done, but now they are doing it while narrating it to someone else who's probably sitting in a warm office somewhere.
And meanwhile, the sun is going down, the wind is picking up.
And hours pass. The day ends in failure. The system is still down. The client is losing money on lost power generation. The tech is frozen and frustrated.
That brings us to day 2. And I love the resilience here. The tech doesn't give up. They come back better prepared.
Better prepared physically and tactically. The source mentions they brought better insulated gloves and, crucially, toe and hand warmers.
Never underestimate the power of toe warmers. If your feet are cold, your brain stops working.
It's a game changer for stamina.
Yeah.
But tactically, they also brought a spare cell kit.
Explain that. What's the logic there?
So the inverter connects to the internet to talk to SolarEdge, usually via the building's local network or an existing cell card. The tech thought, maybe the issue is the internet connection. Maybe the data is getting choked or blocked by a firewall.
Okay.
If they can install a dedicated high-speed cellular link, maybe they can force inverter number 2 to come online independently.
It's a solid theory. You're trying to build a temporary bridge around the broken road. Does it work?
No. Even with the new hardware, the symptoms remain exactly the same. The inverter still thinks it is alone in the universe. The tech is stuck in the same loop, checking settings, escalating the ticket to Tier 2 support, waiting on hold while this support rep talks to a supervisor.
We are hours deep again, and I imagine the frustration is just boiling over at this point. You've checked the voltage, you've swapped the comms gear, you've rebooted it electrically. Why isn't it working?
And this is the turning point of the whole story. The expert in this case, our source, Alexis, highlights a critical gap in the support process. At no point during 2 days of troubleshooting, multiple calls and escalations, did the remote support team suggest a hard reset.
A hard reset. Now, to me, that sounds like a basic step. I hard reset my phone when it freezes. Why is that significant here?
Well, in the world of complex industrial electronics, a hard reset or a factory reset is often seen as the nuclear option.
Right.
It wipes settings, it clears historical data, it resets grid profiles. It means you have to reprogram the whole unit from scratch. It's what you do when you have run out of all other ideas.
So why didn't support suggest it?
Likely because it's not in the Tier 1 script, or because they are trained to preserve data at all costs. They were focused on electrical diagnostics and connectivity. They were looking for a broken wire, not a broken mind.
They were treating it like an electrical failure, not a software crash.
Exactly. So the solution didn't come from the manual. No. It came from the tech's intuition and familiarity with the setup menus. The source says anyone who's lived with these systems long enough knows the menu. Buried deep in that act, under maintenance settings, is the option for a factory hard reset.
So the tech is standing there, probably losing feeling in their toes again, looking at this button on the screen. It feels risky, right? If you wipe it and it still doesn't work, now you just have a blank brick.
Exactly. They describe it as the nuclear option, usually reserved for when things have gone completely sideways. And frankly, things were sideways. They had nothing left to lose. So they hit the button.
Walk us through what happens next. Does it explode?
Thankfully, no. The inverter reboots. But it's not just a power cycle this time. It's a brain wipe. It comes back up and immediately starts updating its firmware.
Okay.
And then it begins re-enumerating the internal units.
Re-enumerating, that's a great word. It sounds very official. What is actually happening inside the box when it does that?
Think of it like a classroom roll call. Before the reset, the inverter had a corrupted list. It thought the classroom was empty or the seating chart was totally garbled. It was calling out names that didn't exist. When you re-enumerate, you burn the old seating chart. The inverter wakes up, looks at its internal components, and says, okay, sound off. Who is here?
And since it's a fresh start, it actually listens.
Exactly. It counts and lists all its internal components again. It clears out the corrupted memory of I can't see anything and looks at the world with fresh eyes. Suddenly, the optimizers begin populating on the screen. One by one, they check in. The system starts behaving like a functional unit again.
It's alive.
It works, and it's crucial to analyze why it worked. The system didn't come back because the tech tightened a wire. It didn't come back because they replaced a fuse. It came back because of a software reboot.
That is the aha moment right there.
Yeah.
It is. And this brings us to the core argument of the source material. We need a complete paradigm shift in how we view this equipment. Alexis Lewis argues that SolarEdge inverters, and really most modern industrial gear, are not just electrical equipment.
Right. They aren't just transformers and capacitors anymore.
They are computers, they are firmware-driven, they are communication-dependent, they are constantly updating, they have IP addresses, they have MC addresses, they are IoT devices that happen to output 480 volts.
It's like when cars started getting ECUs. Suddenly, being a mechanic wasn't just about wrenches, it was about diagnostic laptops.
That is the perfect analogy. If a mechanic today tried to fix a Tesla or even a modern Ford with just a wrench, they'd fail. The source explicitly points out the knowledge gap. If a technician goes to a site treating this strictly as electrical gear checking voltage, checking amps, they will lose.
They'll fail to fix the problem.
They'll fail because they are fixing the body when the mind is broken.
Because the problem isn't volts, the problem is code.
The problem is a frozen operating system. The tech needs to understand menus, they need to understand pairing logic, and they need to understand how firmware interacts with hardware. They need to know that sometimes a software glitch can masquerade as a hardware failure.
And this leads to a really interesting point about the difference between support and the field. Because clearly, support failed here. They kept the tech running in circles for 2 days.
Yes, and we shouldn't bash support too hard. They have a role. They have the schematics, they have the logs. But they cannot replace field familiarity and pattern recognition.
Right.
Support follows a script, a linear decision tree. If A, then B.
But the real world isn't linear, especially not on a freezing roof.
No. The field tech knows that sometimes the map is wrong. The field tech knows when the situation feels like a software crash, even if the electrical diagnostics say otherwise. It's intuition born from experience. It's the difference between reading a medical textbook and actually treating a patient.
The source says support can help, but they can't replace knowing when to pull the hard reset lever.
And that knowledge is expensive. The source notes that lacking this specific IT-style knowledge leads to losing days of work. I mean, think about the cost of that. 2 days of a skilled technician's time, travel, equipment, plus the lost power generation for the client, all because nobody thought to hit factory reset.
It really blurs the line of what a trade is today.
Yeah.
We usually think of solar techs as electricians, blue collar, hands-on, tools in the belt. But this story suggests they are actually field IT admins who also happen to not be afraid of heights.
That is exactly where the industry is heading. As our infrastructure gets smarter, smart grids, smart inverters, battery storage, the maintenance of that infrastructure becomes a computer science problem. You can't just be a wireman anymore. You have to be a sysadmin.
So if you are listening to this and you work in O&M operations and maintenance, or really any field involving modern machinery, what is the lesson here?
The lesson is to broaden your toolkit. You can't just carry a screwdriver and a multimeter anymore. You need to carry a deep understanding of the software architecture of the devices you install. You need to be curious about the menus. You need to know what re-enumeration means. You need to read the release notes on firmware updates.
And maybe don't be afraid to hit the nuclear button if the official support is running you in circles.
Well, with caution, of course. You don't want to wipe a system that just has a blown fuse. You still need to do the basic electrical checks. But yes, trust your intuition when the symptoms point to a brain problem rather than a body problem. If the lights are on but nobody's home, reboot the house.
It is a wild story. A freezing rooftop, a stubborn machine, and a victory won not by replacing a part, but by refreshing the code. It really makes you think about how much of our physical world is now held together by lines of code we can't even see.
And how fragile that can be when the people tasked with fixing it aren't trained to see it that way. We are building these incredibly complex systems, but are we training the workforce to maintain them? Or are we just handing them manuals that are out of date the moment they're printed?
Right. It feels like there's a disconnect between the engineers in the lab designing these smart features and the guys in the van who have to figure out why it stopped working in the middle of a blizzard.
That disconnect is real. And until we bridge it by training tradespeople in IT concepts, we're going to have a lot more days like day one on that roof.
So here is a question to leave you with today. As we build more and more of this smart infrastructure, everything from solar farms to smart highways to automated factories, are we reaching a point where remote support is actually becoming less effective?
That is the provocative thought. If the support teams are sitting in a warm office looking at a screen that just says offline, are they just too detached from the physical reality of the machine to be helpful in a crisis?
Are we building systems that are too complex for the traditional support model to handle? Maybe the future isn't better phone support. Maybe the future is empowering the field techs to act like IT admins from day one. giving them the keys to the kingdom rather than making them ask for permission to fix the machine.
I think that is the direction we have to go. The person on the roof needs the power to reset the system. They are the ones taking the risk. They should have the control.
Well, next time you see a solar panel, just remember there is a tiny computer inside there, and it might just need a reboot. That wraps up this deep dive into the frozen world of solar maintenance.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. We hope you found this podcast useful. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to us at info@alternativesolutions.ag. Thanks again for listening and be sure to tune in for future episodes.